You are live.
Good afternoon. This is a meeting of the Legislative Committee. I am acting as interim chair for Michael Cardoza, the chair of the committee, while he recovers from a shoulder injury, which requires him to take a little time off the committee until he recovers. We convened this meeting.
Yeah, let me say, we do have a quorum of commissioners present here in New York. And the meeting is being convened pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive Law and Article 7 of the Open Meetings Law, Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, which is the Open Meetings Law. Commissioner Karras is attending the meeting pursuant to POL 103-A and the Commission's rules and resolution governing remote participation in extraordinary circumstances.
Thank you. So as you know, the Legislative Committee made recommendations to the full committee, to the full commission to adopt the legislative agenda, which we did. The legislative agenda came from the recommendations and suggestions from good government groups and others during our public meeting in 2024. The agenda that we adopted has we adopted 9 legislative proposals for our agenda. And the purpose of this meeting is to be able to let other members of the commission who did not have an opportunity to have a full discussion about what we selected and why, and to discuss whether we should put any other items on the legislative agenda at this time.
Thank you. Just as a matter of update, just to update the committee, since the legislative agenda was adopted by the commission, staff has met with a number of senators and assembly members, including Senator Shelley Mayer, who is the chair of the Committee on Ethics and Internal Governance in the Senate, Senator James Skoufis, who's the chair of the Committee on Investigations into Government Operations in the Senate, and Assembly Member Karen McMahon, who's chair of the Committee on Ethics and Guidance in the Assembly. We have meetings scheduled with Senator Liz Krueger, who's the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and with Assembly Member James McDonald, who's the chair of the Committee on Operations in the Assembly. A number of our current legislative proposals have been introduced in the legislature. Our third proposal on training non-compliance penalties for lobbyists and clients has been introduced in the Senate. That's S5590. Proposal 5, requiring electronic submission of all lobbying filings, has been introduced in both chambers. It's S5843 and A2330, introduced by Senator Skoufis and Assemblymember McDonald. Our 6th proposal to post the financial disclosure statements of candidates for the legislature and statewide office has been introduced in the Senate as S4857. That was introduced by Senator Skoufis and Hoylman Siegel. And A463, introduced by Assemblymember Paulin. Our 7th proposal to require electronic filing of all financial disclosure statements has been introduced in the Senate, and that's S6162, introduced by Senator Skoufis. And our 9th proposal to eliminate the physical access requirement for advisory committees and subcommittees of public bodies, that is non-decisional bodies. S647 was introduced by Senator Skoufis and A2329 by Assemblymember McDonald. So we've had a number of proposals that were advanced in the 2 chambers of the legislature.
So
those are of the 9 affirmative proposals.
that's pretty good. Right? So the committee and the commission seriously considered the suggestions made at the public meeting, and staff prepared a chart of where we are with those, and I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at those already. Was any, yes? Okay. So the first group, of suggestions, concern lobbying proposals. Does anyone have any questions about those proposals, or why they're not on the agenda, or want to comment on any of them? Yes, yes, Commissioner Ayers.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, and thanks to staff and to Dolly and the committee for convening this meeting. I really appreciate it. So I just thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit about the proposal on indicating in lobbying filings what position is being taken. So one of the proposals that we've heard from advocacy groups is like you report your lobbying, but right now you don't report whether you're lobbying for the bill or against the bill or something else. And I know staff has been doing work to try to gather some information that would help us figure that out. So I just wanted to ask if staff could talk about that process and what information they're looking for and how it will affect their view on this idea.
Yes, as commissioners know, we now have on staff a research data analyst who joined us earlier this year. She's present here, Kathy Kaufman, Dr. Kathy Kaufman, I should say, who has been looking at a number of the issues. And with respect to the first one, we had identified 6 jurisdictions in which lobbyists are asked to state some form of position if they're lobbying with respect to state legislation. And Kathy has dug into the data. She's still gathering information, but the findings are interesting because they do indicate, and I'm going to turn this over to Kathy to give you a little bit more texture on it, but they do indicate, contrary to what some might have been expecting, that lobbyists do state categorical positions on legislation frequently, and they don't retreat into sort of ambiguous categories, which was a concern that we had going into the assessment of the proposal. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The numbers vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But I think the trend looks toward it being helpful to have, or at least productive, to have that kind of information supply. Cassie, can you add more detail to that?
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to share the work. We looked into, I sought out data sets for Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Idaho. We were able to find available data for, I was able to find the position categories for all but Idaho. And I was able to find some available data for 5 of those areas, for Colorado, Montana, Nevada, and New Jersey. 4. In each of those, although the neutral categories varied a little bit, we had monitoring, which is not a lobbying category in New York, amending, modify, neutral, amendment, part promote, part oppose. So the neutral categories varied a bunch across these states, but in the end, the states that do use them that we found that I was able to analyze the data for, Colorado, Nebraska, and New Jersey, all had a substantial proportion of lobbyists still filing positions that were non-neutral. So in Colorado, we had 41% of lobbyists filed supporting positions, 14% opposing. So the ambiguous positions captured about a little under 50%. In Nebraska, 43% used a neutral category, but 62% used a non-neutral category. And in New Jersey, only 24% used a neutral category and 76% used non-neutral categories. So the bottom line is that there was a lot of use of non-neutral categories. It also raised some issues about the complexity of this information, depending upon how the data is structured and how we solicit it, because the lobbyists, depending upon the jurisdiction, were able to change their categories within different timeframes. So Nebraska, for instance, they could change on a daily basis. So we might have, up to 40 different positions taken by lobbyists. So for analytical purposes and maybe for the purposes of the public, they would have to grapple with how to use that information. But it does seem useful in terms of giving a view of where the lobbyists are positioned and their clients are positioned.
Great. Does that mean that staff is leaning towards supporting this change in the future?
Well, the data is trending. Our concern at the outset had been, and the feedback we were getting anecdotally from those who study this, not a lot of groups that study it, we discovered in poking around, trying to find existing studies. But the anecdotal responses we were getting was that they expected that it would be a retreat into the neutral or ambiguous categories. And so that suggested that it wouldn't be a worthwhile enterprise to collect the information to make the changes that would be necessary to the system in order to accommodate it. Now I think it's leaning the other way. There's still some additional data to collect in maybe broader periods of time. Kathy really hasn't had the opportunity to dig in to the specifics of the legislation that's involved, or the policy matters that are involved. And I think it would be worthwhile doing a little bit more digging before we take a firm position on that. But certainly we could have that work done in due course. I don't know that we would be at a point where we could take a position in support of the change in this legislative session.
Sure, yeah.
But maybe in the future, because this is good work and it's really informative, but we don't have I don't have a good sense yet of what kinds of issues we're talking about, whether they're very simple ones or if they're more complicated policy issues where lobbyists are flipping back and forth.
I should have added that for context, that this was just I only looked at 2024 data for each of the states I was able to acquire data for. So if we wanted to look at trends and see if these are anomalous, again, it's just a small group of states, but there aren't that many states that we know of that collect this. So so this is just kind of a preliminary look.
Great.
We have to decide if we want to go further with it.
Well, thanks so much. I think that's fantastic. And I think that, when you all do have a chance to get the amount of data you feel is needed, it'd be super helpful to legislators to know that this work was done as they think about this proposal, because it does seem like we're actually breaking new ground in gathering this information, and I'm proud to be a part of that commission. So thank you.
So based on that recommendation, I guess the committee agrees that for the moment in time, we're going to hold off on adding this to the agenda until we get more information. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions on the lobbying proposals?
I had a couple, but I don't need to monopolize things if others.
You're the reason we're convening the
Yeah. All right.
Reason for us to vet these proposals and figure out if we should amend our legislative agenda or add to it. So take it away.
All right, thanks. Well, why don't I just list them, because there were a couple, and I think they're relatively minor as far as what discussion is likely to follow. So one was we've gotten a proposal to support the bill that would count as lobbying activity efforts to influence the nominations process. And it seemed to me like the main concern was resources, that if there's significant new information that we have to process, that's going to be more work for staff. But I was curious as to whether that's correct, that the concern is just resources. I mean, it seems to me that lobbying on nominations is lobbying. I can't. So I'm curious as to whether there's any principled reason to distinguish that from other forms of lobbying in the statute. I guess my view is it seems like something we should support, with the important caveat that we would need resources to be able to manage that information. But I'm curious about staff's thinking on that.
I believe we put it forward. Well, it was put forward and didn't pass. Right? Is that right? It didn't go through. I think the first proposal didn't pass because it was supposed to be retroactive.
It would have been retroactive.
It would have been retroactive, and the governor refused to sign it. And I think it went forward again without the retroactivity. And I understand it got stuck. It didn't go past the assembly. Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of staff's position, we're kind of in the place we were before. Threshold matter, of course, lobbying with respect to nominations has not been defined as part of lobbying.
Yep.
It's a matter of the state's policy. So it would be a policy change to do that. In terms of the expense, it's not just